think it may be great to start setting the stage with the slide that you see that Dr. Wamai can talk about what we are seeing in terms of funding in the life sciences in Africa.
Thank you. So I want to kick off with this slide, and maybe a number of you are wondering, is this working? Thank you. I would like to kick off with the slide you see in front of you, and there might be a few of you wondering, what has this got to do with anything? And because this is supposed to be a discussion, rather than take you through the usual slides and talk through them and so on, I'm going to make it a little bit interactive and participative. And I would like to have a few ideas from the floor on what it might be that is bugging you about this slide, or what it is that you like, anything, either something positive or negative that you're noticing on the slide. There are no right or wrong answers. And I feel as though I might have to choose somebody. Who's that? Yeah? Yeah, growth in investment is one thing we are noticing. Thank you for that, for breaking the ice. I think the man here in a pink T-shirt looks very tickled. You might want to say something. No?
Can I suggest that I only see 5 countries that are on that slide when the continent is pretty big?
Right, okay. I'll say a few things. I mean that I notice everything, but some of the things that are interesting for me is that we have that famous hockey stick that venture capitalists usually look for. And as you can see, there's been a dramatic growth, even if from a very small base, over a very small period of time. It is true that we're only seeing a number of countries, and what this is telling us is that almost all the money that is in this space is going to those countries. And even if Nigeria is coming top there, their population is many times most of the countries, quite a few, even if, well, Egypt is also quite large, but the real question is, what is beneath that? That is a question that I would like us to explore. And in the title there's already a giveaway, because it's talking about the African startup landscape expanding in an unprecedented rate. But we are really talking about fintech. We are really talking about fintech. We are really talking about things like e-commerce. So what we are talking about here is creating an infrastructure that will allow us to do things. And that's very good. We need more of that. We don't have enough of that. As you can see, the map is very bare. And even in the countries that have been shaded, we probably need much more facilitation of fintech and e-commerce. So we're talking about business solutions and how to facilitate business and so on. And here in the biosciences space, we probably don't even have much data. We don't even have an idea of what's going on, but my guess is that hardly anything is happening. And if you build the infrastructure, that is a step. The next step is it's like a road. So what exactly are you going to be transporting down this road? So it's nice and good to have a way of paying this and the other very easily and so on, but what is it? What is connected to the real economy? What is the real economy bringing to the table? Because that is where growth happens, and that is where real impacts come from. Of course, it needs to be facilitated by, business models and, being able to sort of nimbly move from one end to the other and so on and so forth. And within biosciences, there's something that is particularly interesting because it touches directly on the real economy, whether we are talking about, areas to do with agriculture, or we are talking to do in areas to do with renewable energy, or we are talking about medicines and so on. And what we really need to think is how, and actually 2 things we need to think about: how we can get that going, because it doesn't fit within this model that we are seeing here. Because if you're talking about maybe developing medical devices, Wambui focuses on helping to develop medical devices. These are not things you can turn around in 2 or 3 months and then sell it to a bank and then exit and then say you've been valued at $3 billion and you're at the Y Combinator and all this sort of stuff and so on. So it's for us to begin to have a conversation to think, what model do we need specifically for Africa? We don't have to copy anybody. that is actually going to speak to us and talk to us when we are working in this biosciences area, when we are thinking about deep tech and things like that, and for Africa. And how is that going to be organized? How is that going to be funded? How is that going to, what is the collaboration in that space going to look like? So these are some of the questions I want to throw up, and I want to get your engagement from that. But before we move to that, I'll come back to you and hear more from your perspective.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I would like to say about the ecosystem in East Africa is that the startup and innovation, it's very vibrant. There's a lot going on, but you know the whole idea of fintech and digital is very, very big, and it kind of dwarfs the rest of the innovation ecosystem. But that's okay. As long as we're innovating and we're moving forward, it shines a spotlight on innovation. Some of the things that as Vilgrow Africa we do is we try to grow partnerships with other arms other than just the entrepreneur support organizations, such things as government. And the Kenya National Innovation Agency, which is a government organization, is one that we partner with very closely so that we keep government close. Because especially when you're talking about med tech devices and that kind of thing, you have to keep in mind that there's it's a regulated environment, and so you have to partner with government agencies. We also like to partner with academia, not sort of being outside of academia, but very close to what is happening in research and development so that we can integrate it into the startup environment. So having what is often referred to as a triple helix, being very much alive and well, which is academia, government, and private industry, and trying to grow the startup ecosystem, you know, sort of surrounded by that triple helix, is something that is in progress and is happening, but sometimes we have to work both within that structure, but sometimes out of it to be able to be a little bit more nimble. So, you know, when as Vilgrow Africa, we are also thinking about expanding outside of East Africa, and we have partnerships in West Africa, in Southern Africa. I think we've gone as far as Zambia, but you know, looking for partnerships because we understand that we don't know everything, and you know, it is with partnerships that we're going to get stronger. So there may be places where we're a little bit ahead, there may be places we're a little bit behind. You know, being at this conference, I have seen so much that is happening in Southern Africa that has to do with biotechnology that is maybe ahead of where we are in Eastern Africa. And maybe our commercialization processes may be a little bit ahead. And, you know, I'm just sort of imagining what kind of collaborations we could have if we can take what our strengths are and build together to get to the point where we're getting a pipeline of industries and enterprises going out. So, Dr. Wamai, do you see sort of the hub partnerships with hubs and partnerships with academia when you're doing, you know, in terms of your Africa Oxford initiative? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how that could support or does support the ecosystem in Africa.
Okay, I could do that. Maybe actually I'll go back a few slides and that I showed yesterday. Let me see if I can do that. Oh, is this on? Okay. So maybe this is not very visible, but whoops. Okay. Yes. So the Africa Oxford Health Initiative, innovation platform, is really an attempt to help to begin making things happen. Oxford is not wanting to stay there for the long haul doing this. We are only just beginning, and the hope is that we will have no reason to carry on very soon, especially with the BioAfrica Convention and all the good stuff that is coming through. But what we are currently doing really is offering a program that is based on something we were observing on the ground for a very long time. And I would actually like to get your input as well, if and see how we could make things work in a more specific manner that makes more sense. So after talking to a number of people who are in this space and trying to figure out what their main pain points were and what it is that they were trying to do, we realized that there are a lot of people who have completed their postgraduate studies, are really committed to engaging with specific problems in their contexts. A number of them might be medical doctors who have also done postdoctoral studies, engineers, and so on and so forth, who have the science and the know-how to resolve the problem from the science side of things, but then also from the contextual side of things and understanding the social issues. And what we were observing is that they would start working on this as a side project. So they have their day job, they're working very hard, but they have literally no support. They're using their own resources, Googling, journals when they have their spare time and, trying to see where the science is going. And then when they got to, some steps ahead and realized they could get funding, then they realized that they need to come up with a business model. And, they're stuck. They're like, I'm a medical doctor. Well, what is a business model? How do I even come with one? Where do I even start? What is it? So this is a whole new world that they need to begin to understand. So what I'm really saying here, there's the science side of things, but then there's also the other side of things of running a business that one needs to understand. So what this program really does is try to bring these people. Most of them will normally have startups anyway. Some of them even up to the MPV level, but they've done that on their own without really much support or an integrated curriculum. And we bring them together, so we take them through a program that is very much focused on anything that supports strengthening of health systems. But we have a particular interest in things like devices, because we are also looking at the strengths that we have in Oxford. We are looking at therapeutics, we are looking at vaccines, we are looking at even platforms to enable this to happen, and we are looking for digitally enabled technologies that are coming out of the pipeline, diagnostics, and so on and so forth. And the idea is that over time, we'll be able to zero in on stuff that we need that is not software. Because you saw in the previous slide, we are talking a lot about creating infrastructure that is software based and so on and so forth. But if you have cancer and you want to know whether you have cancer, an app is not going to really do the job for you. In fact, apps are known not. People have tried to create a way to diagnose using AI, and that really never really works. But even beyond that, if you need a diagnostic tool for cancer, you really want that to happen, and you really need to begin to create the enabling environment. So that's the idea behind the areas that are highlighted there. But then also the other thing to highlight is that whilst there are a lot of resources in Oxford, including a lot of knowledge in very many different areas and so on, is that people at Oxford don't know everything. Genius is spread evenly across the world. And on top of that, they might not necessarily be very familiar with the contexts that are out here. So people here are better able to solve the problems because they know them better than everybody else, and they also have the science. They may not have all the resources, so that is something to think about and to see how to enable it. But the idea behind this is that the solution should really be coming from people on the ground rather than from the outside. And hence the fourth element there, which is that the solutions they're trying to develop are very Africa-led, and the point is that we want to create a critical mass of people who are able to actually engage in this space in their own right and get things going. And then basically what happens, because as we all know, it's a continuous learning process in this innovation world. But the key point is that I want to come to this slide is that, so the main problem is that people were having to do this on their own, create a sense of how they'll do the science, and then try and figure out what is a business plan, go to Google and blah, 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 and so on. So what we do is that we have a 5-month virtual program where we give them skills on entrepreneurship that are focused on health and medical technology. And the idea being is it's focused on business strategy, and it's like a mini MBA, but then focused on startups and startups in the health space. So that gives you a sense of how what are cap tables, and how do you negotiate, or how do you deal with this space, and how do you maneuver your way around, how do you build a team, how do you build collaborations, how do you build traction, what is the journey, and all that stuff, and how do you use human-centered design to go about whatever it is that you're trying to do, how do you pivot, what do these things mean? So give them the language and the understanding of how that space works. And one of the things we are beginning to observe, which might not be unfamiliar to you, is that, in effect, the current model is one that helps you to be ready to be able to pitch. And when you pitch for funding, what the funder is looking at is the ability to create, deliver, and capture value. So they're very much looking at the team more than the fact that, of course, as a startup, you're not already selling anything. But again, where we are stuck is in this space where venture capital is for 5 to 7 years and then exiting, but we are working in a space that needs patient capital. So hence the need to begin to think, what sort of models could we have that will take these startups forward without the constraints that we have coming from the current setups of the venture capital. And also understanding that venture capital is a very small percentage of funding that goes into innovative businesses, even if there's quite a lot of hype, it's quite loud and it seems like the only thing, etc. There are many other alternatives that people ought to be thinking about and making them work for the African context. So that's all I'll say for now about the program. I hope I've said enough.
Yes, and I think that's actually a very complementary conversation, with what support organizations like Vilgro Africa do, because we are on the ground in East Africa to begin with, but like I said, expanding to different parts of Africa. And what we are doing is we provide seed funding because we are an impact investor, and we're doing that because there is a gap, especially for the early stage startups. We know they are not ready to go in front of VCs, and they need a fair amount of seed capital, but even more than that, they need those skills that Dr. Amai is talking about to get them to the place where they are ready to talk to the bigger money people. So, we are doing both that financial and the technical assistance, which is not just the commercialization and investor readiness, but in the case of medtech, which is what I really support, is providing them with the skills and knowledge to have internationally viable devices, right? So they understand the regulatory environment, they understand the idea of quality management systems, all those things that are not just the invention and innovation of the product, but what it is around the ecosystem of medtech that they are going to need to take care of to actually be commercially successful and viable. Now, speaking of the regulatory environment, because I think that is a big part of almost anything in the biosciences, because it's highly regulated, starting to think about harmonization of regulation across Africa. I know in East Africa that has started with, just very pharma focused to begin with. But across, I think, almost all countries, pharma leads the way, and then diagnostics and vaccinations and the rest follow. So it is actually very encouraging that we have started in East Africa to really talk about and work on regulatory harmonization, because I'm very sure that the diagnostics medtech is going to follow. And I do see that we are out of time, so maybe Dr. Wamai, any final thoughts about the ecosystem or growing the ecosystem?
Yes, so a final thought. This might look like a drop in the ocean, but one has to begin somewhere. If you wait for everything to become perfect before you start, you'll never start. So we start with that entrepreneurship side of things, and then after the fellows have completed that, they're welcome to apply for a fellowship to come to Oxford and work on the technical side in laboratories and develop their technology. But then there's still much more to do, as you can imagine, because onwards from there, where to next? You know, and this, it's very much about them needing to be in a system that is joined up that will allow them to go to the next level. So there's still quite a lot of work, and I was very pleased to hear about the declaration this morning, because it's very obvious that we need a pull towards developing product development that allows those companies to flourish on the ground. So I think I'm going to leave it there for now, and I don't know whether we'll be taking any questions.
Are there any burning questions? Because we can take a question if there's a burning question. And while anyone is coming up who might have a question, I'll close it by saying that, you know, at Vilgro Africa, we really do want to reach out for collaboration and partnership. So if anybody, you know, in any part of Africa or outside of Africa who has Africa's interests at heart would like to partner with, an ESO, an entrepreneur support organization that is on the ground and helping startups with their commercialization and their growth, be very, very happy to talk to you. Go ahead, sir.
So, not a question, it's a comment. I mean, I like what you said in terms of partnership. And I think we would, we'll chat a little offline, but I think one of the key areas that we've identified in South Africa over a number of years, especially in terms of the biosciences areas and startups, yes, we do a lot in terms of business development. But the model that really works is open innovation centers. If you ask many entrepreneurs right here, it's all good and well to go for forums, but they want a place where they can innovate. And it's not about just the infrastructure is one area, but they want to train their future workforce in this area and then move out. And I think that's where we miss the boat sometimes. There's a lot of emphasis about marketing and whatever. It's a startup. Get the technology right. Get the product in a bottle as soon as possible as a prototype, so that they understand what's the techno-economics, and then we talk about the rest of the stuff. You can't do it in parallel. So I'll be very happy to chat to you a little later around the open innovation systems we have at CSR. There are a couple of colleagues around here. There's the Technology Innovation Agency that has platforms. Dipak's from the BioCity. Everyone's running that model because that's the real need, a place to innovate. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, one more question. Okay, we'll take the two questions and then we'll close it out.
So yeah, again, not a question, but a comment. So first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Omai, for setting up this program. What I feel is that a lot of the knowledge, I would wish that it would not be encapsulated within a program. If it's possible to have a website that has a lot of this documented out as open and shared knowledge, just so that people can, founders can find this information available when they search on YouTube or when they search online, and just some basic steps. It might not be extremely in-depth, it may not be customized to their specific situation, but it would be great to have that. I made a lot of mistakes when I started off, because I started my own lab. I was not aiming to be a health tech entrepreneur. I was just trying to solve my own local problems. And the many things that I didn't know along the way, because I don't know, I think there's a conspiracy to teach doctors medicine and not to teach them business. So we had learned a lot of stuff along the way. But you see, that could have been avoided. All those mistakes could have been avoided if there's like a, some guide, what do they call it? Idiot doctor guide to business. On business, yeah, that would have been helpful. Thank you.
There was another question. No? Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us in this conversation. And let's think of it as the beginning of a conversation and not the end. And let's continue the conversation about collaborating and growing the ecosystem for innovation. Thank you.